Yeah.
So there's that. And then we got a great decision last week on stay put. So I wanted to share that. And I believe I did send it to you before that show we had that didn't actually happen because you had technical issues
Okay.
last week. The case
Yes.
is called Parent versus Pleasanton Unified School District and Contra Costa County Office of Education. So first of all, guys, if you need things to read, you can go online and go to the Special Education Hearing Office website and you can get the OAH decisions. And I'll tell you how the attorneys learn the law. They read these decisions. And sometimes they're really boring and they often go on for too long, but they also really contain the law. And there's nothing to prevent you all from looking at some of these decisions and seeing how these cases are decided and how they're codified. Um, it's really available to any parent. So this was a situation where this child was a medically fragile child and she had a lot of in-home services. They weren't ABA services, so in some ways we would be trying to extend the same or similar rationales as come up in the decision to what was at issue in the student's case, but I think it can work. So the first thing is that the student had a distance learning plan, and the student's attorney, I'm assuming, decided that the distance learning plan was not working. So the student's attorney filed a motion for stay put. In other words, to get the hearing office to order that the last agreed upon services in the child's IEP would be implemented until the dispute between the parties about the distance learning plan could be resolved. So anyway, student acknowledges that school campuses are closed due to statewide public health orders related to COVID-19. Student requests a stay put order only with respect to essential related services and students' individualized education program. And then the student had documentary evidence and sworn declarations. So you can imagine what the student is getting is written reports from different education providers and also sworn, written declarations under penalty of perjury about how the distance learning plan was working. So the school district opposed the motion on the grounds that their schools were closed and they said they couldn't provide in-person education. And they also asked the Office of Administrative Hearings make a finding that the distance learning plan would be the student stay put. So anyway, the hearing office looked at all of this and they went a little bit into the history of how services went in home. And then they rendered an opinion. So on March 4th, 2020, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency in California. On March 13th, 2020, he issued an executive order which directed school district operations during public health related school closures. The order directed the California Department of Education and the Health and Human Services Agency to jointly develop guidance ensuring that students with disabilities receive a free and appropriate public education consistent with their individualized education program. On April 9th, 2020, the California Department of Education implemented the order by issuing special education guidance for COVID-19. Sorry, they have these terrible sirens here for no reason. The guidance does not address the stay put provision under the IDEA. However, the guidance does address whether school districts may provide in-person special education services while schools are closed due to COVID-19. So the question was, is a lead educational agency precluded from providing services to students with disabilities in person or in the home for the purpose of supporting the student in accessing the alternative options for learning being offered? The answer is No, they're not precluded. In some exceptional situations, LEAs may need to provide certain supports and services in person in order to maintain students' mental and physical health and safety for the purpose of supporting the student in accessing the alternative options for learning being offered, e.g. distance learning. So you can see that's exactly what ABA in the home could potentially do. With that said, alternative service delivery options should seek to comply with federal, state, and local health office officials' guidance relating to physical distancing, with the goal of keeping students, teachers, and service providers safe and healthy as the primary consideration. They went on to say that some service providers are deemed essential workers under Newsom's executive order, including nurses and assistants, physical and occupational therapists and assistants, social workers, and speech pathologists. The guidance states, therefore, if an individualized determination is made that a student needs services or supports in person to maintain their mental, physical health and safety for the purpose of supporting the student in accessing the alternative options for learning being offered, e.g. distance learning, a lead educational agency is not necessarily precluded from providing that service by Governor Newsom's stay-home order. So they then talk about the rules as relate to reopening schools, which isn't really necessary to go into here. But then they look at this legal framework and they talk about the student in question. She's an 11-year-old girl born with a chromosomal syndrome, which significantly impacts all areas of her development. She's orthopedically, cognitively, and visually impaired. She is nonverbal. As part of her educational program, student requires speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, adapted PE, and specialized vision services. She also requires a healthcare plan and a full-time licensed vocational nurse as her one-to-one aide. Student has seizures and is fed primarily through a tube. Pursuant to her IEP, her full-time LVN is tasked with implementing a checklist of 34 items at each school day, including administering medication and tube feeding, monitoring her for seizures, and providing a medical response and repositioning and ambulating her body. Everybody agreed on which IEP was a state put IEP, so that wasn't disputed. The parties also agree that the distance learning plan for student does not offer her a FAPE as shown by the exhibits attached to her motion and related filings. Parents do consent to students' distance learning plan. However, Pleasanton and Contra Costa County contend that the distance learning plan is a reasonable and feasible plan under extraordinary circumstances. They argue they are not permitted to deliver in-person services to students due to the July 17, 2020 framework, which is probably from the health department, and request that OAH order students' distance learning plan be her state put placement. They go on to say that their claim that they can't do this is contradicted by the fact that they have been providing in-person physical therapy to students since July 2020 under an order from the California Department of Education Compliance Unit. The documentary exhibits attached to students' motions and filings show that after being ordered to deliver in-person services, Pleasanton established a detailed protocol to deliver the compensatory physical educations in students' home, which has been successful. The California education guidelines under Governor Newsom's executive order establish that schools are not precluded from providing in-person educational services. Contra Costa Health Services, the public health authority in which Pleasanton is located, takes the position that they're allowing in-person educational services for any activities that cannot be done remotely and are required for students to be able to obtain their education. Finally, they have not provided any legal authority to support a finding that the COVID-19 pandemic creates an exception to the stay put requirement. When a stay put placement cannot be implemented exactly as written on the IEP document, school districts must attempt to replicate the placement that existed at the time the dispute arose as closely as possible. The stay put placement must be a complete program for the child. Student has shown that the distance learning plan is not a comparable program given her need for intensive services to access her education. Accordingly, student's motion is granted. Within 15 days of this order, the district shall provide in-person services to student in the duration and intensity as described in her IEP in the following areas: licensed LVN, speech therapy, physical therapy, and vision therapy. Pleasanton and Contra Costa may implement student stay put services with qualified staff from a non-public agency if they so choose. Services may be implemented in the student's home. Nothing in this order requires Pleasanton and Contra Costa to provide services on school sites or with school staff. Amen.
So, and we do have a bunch of questions that came in, but so for me, what I got out of that, because I don't get nearly as much out of it as you get out of it, but what I got out of that is that even with Governor Newsom's shutting down of schools, that essential services still can be provided, and that sometimes having in-person in the home is an essential service for some of our kids. Was that the takeaway I was supposed to get?
Yeah, I mean, they said that they didn't, I think they would have said that ABA services were essential if they were more savvy about how we treat kids with autism in this state.
They have determined that ABA is an essential service. That is on the list. It absolutely is.
Well, the decision doesn't reference that, but it would be good to get my hot little hands on whatever you have that says it's an essential service.
But, oh yeah, absolutely. It's considered an essential medical service. I can help you with that, Bonnie. But the problem, I think, is the crossover to, is it essential in the classroom? That's where you're going to have.
Well, I mean, let's just say for purposes of discussion that anything that is written into your IEP is essential because it's considered fundamental in order to let you access the curriculum.
Yeah.
So I would say the reason I wanted to read this to you guys is A, it's sweet. It's nice to have something sweet on Monday morning. B, I think this case shows you that you could go back and you could look at your last agreed upon IEP, and if your distance learning plan isn't working, there is a pathway to getting your last agreed upon services made subject to stay put and could be provided in the home. I'm assuming that she had letters from doctors and people like that said that she was regressing. And I mean, of course she was regressing. Those are very difficult services to implement for somebody that has cognitive and physical delays. I mean, the only other thing, this is just a sidebar, but I'm laughing, is that I read the description of how a preschool is going to do distance learning for like little 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. And I was just like, really? Like, we really want to stick them in front of a computer for 4 hours a day? Like, So anyway, guys, this is your ticket out.
Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.